Good evening. It is time for today's tax talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. This is it is Wednesday, September 28th, the year of our Lord 2022. And that one of the things that I help people with is bankruptcy. I've been helping people with bankruptcy for a long time. Actually, that's how I started my legal career, basically. And they're talking about changing it again. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Won't you join us? Okay, so that's the bankruptcy. As you may know or you may not know, but there's two types if you think of the Bankruptcy Code as a book, and like every other book, it's divided into chapters. And this is why you hear so much about a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 or a Chapter 11 or a Chapter 9, which is municipal. So it depends on what chapter you're on. Each chapter has a different remedy for a different situation. Now, they redid the Bankruptcy Code in 2005, what they call BAPCPA, the Bankruptcy Practice. I have to look that up. It's in here somewhere. Well, we'll talk about it. And that was in 2005. It was a major overhaul of chapter of the Bankruptcy Code, and it required many things like they had to take a class, credit counseling class before you could file bankruptcy, and a lot of things like that. That actually they were trying to make it more difficult for people with money to file bankruptcy. Before 2005 BAPCPA, everyone was presumed entitled to a Chapter 7 discharge. That changed in 2005 based on a means test, and so a means test was introduced. So now Elizabeth Warren used to be she's a lawyer from Harvard. No, that's kind of ironic that she's the one that's always complaining about student loan debt, but it's the student loan debt that paid her for her salary for all these years, and so I'm just, it's kind of and she was a bankruptcy, I wouldn't say specialist because you can't be a specialist for your attorney, but that's what she taught at Harvard, bankruptcy law, and she was always an advocate for changing the bankruptcy system, and now of course she's a senator. And she's been trying to change the bankruptcy system for some time. And they reintroduced a bill, her and Representative Nadler. So let's look at that. Let me get rid of this here. We can get rid of that. And we can. Let's go to that. Well, why didn't it go to that? Let's go to that. Okay, so there we go. This is from Senator Warren's page. I think it's Elizabeth Warren. She's the senator. So here's her page. Issued today, and this is where I found it. Today, United States Senator Elizabeth Warren and House Judiciary Committee Chairman Nadler reintroduced the Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act, bicameral legislation that would simplify and modernize the consumer bankruptcy system and make it easier for individuals and families forced into bankruptcy to get back on their feet. Sounds like a good idea. Who would be against that? Originally introduced in 2020, this legislation would replace the two separate consumer bankruptcy chapters known as Chapter 7 and 13 with a single system available to all consumers, streamlining the filing process and reducing filing fees. The bill would also ensure that families can care for themselves, their children, and their elderly parents during the bankruptcy process by letting renters with back rent avoid eviction, giving people a bath to protect their homes and cars, and letting filers discharge local government fines. Well, you cannot, generally government fines are one of the areas that are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. Another area would be student loans, and this changes that too. We'll get to that. The Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act takes long overdue steps it can't be that overdue. It's 2005 they redid it to make a little easier and a little less expensive for people who are in deep financial trouble to get meaningful bankruptcy relief. I'm grateful to be working with Chairman Nadler on this important legislation to give struggling families a better chance to getting back on their feet. Bankruptcy is an option of last resort, but it also promises a fresh start so that people can get back up and working and providing their families, said Nadler. Today, that promise rings hollow for many people because the bankruptcy system has become complex, unfair, and even punitive for ordinary consumers. The Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act ensures that the bankruptcy system works for the American people and not just for big corporate creditors. Senator Warren and I worked on this issue for many years, and I look forward to continuing our fight for consumers with this new legislation. For too many, bankruptcy relief is out of reach due to significant burdens and high costs, but this relief is a lifeline to hardworking Americans in need. The Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act will remove undue barriers and bring much-needed reforms that will provide all Americans with a fair shot and second chance at economic opportunity. I thank Senator Warren and Chairman Nadler for their leadership. This was from a Representative Cicilline. On Thursday, September 29, 2022, that's tomorrow, Chairman Nadler will hold a hearing at the House Judiciary Committee on our current bankruptcy system and how the Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act can help close loopholes that allow the wealthy to exploit, wealthy means regular Americans, to exploit the bankruptcy system, crack down on predatory practices, and hold corporate wrongdoers accountable. I could say that pretty much the current system does just that. The legislation is co-sponsored by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and Representative Cicilline, who they just quoted. The bill is also supported by the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys. Oh, the actions, I don't know if they're trying to reduce attorney fees. I don't know how that would happen. Because last time they amended the Bankruptcy Code, it became a lot more complex, and it did cost. It costs more because it's more complex. It costs a lot more work for the attorney. The Action Center on Race and Economy, the American Freedom Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, well, why would they care about bankruptcy? Americans for Financial Reform, AFL-CIO, Association of Young Americans, the National Association of Consumer Advocates, the Consumer Federation of America, Demos, the National Alliance for Partnership and Campaign Committee, the Public Citizen Service Employees International Union, SEIU, we've all heard of them, Young Invincibles, the Center for LGBTQ Economic Advancement, well, of course, and Research, never heard of them, CLEAR, and the Center for Responsible Lending, a group of 86 law professors who specialize in bankruptcy. Again, they can't specialize. I guess they could teach it. And consumer law have also sent a letter in support. I don't know how many law professors there are, but I have to say there's a lot more than 86. The Association of Young Americans is proud to endorse the Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act, reintroduced today. From student debt to skyrocketing rents nationwide, young Americans today face unique financial challenges. Senator Warren's and Nadler's legislation would be a lifesaver for young people forced into bankruptcy, with its notable provisions to streamline the bankruptcy filing process, ensure rent protections. I don't know what that would mean. Right now, if you have back rent, I mean, you can't discharge back rent. Well, you can discharge back rent, but you can't stay there. You can't stay in your home. In the home where you just, cram down the rent to the landlord, wouldn't seem fair. You go 6 months, 8 months, a year without paying your rent, and then you file bankruptcy, and then you stay there. It doesn't seem fair. Senator Warren's bill will keep those who must declare bankruptcy. Here's the key here for them: disproportionately women and people of color. Even more so post-pandemic. I don't know. I think we just post-pandemic the last 2 weeks since President Biden said we're not in the pandemic anymore. Wasn't that just 2 weeks ago? from losing everything, including their families' homes and the cars they need to drive to work to make the money needed to keep the roof over their head. Generally, there's ways to keep your car and your home in bankruptcy, in the current bankruptcy system. So I don't know. I've tried to find more information about what's specifically in this bill, and I haven't been able to find it. There is no reason for bankruptcy filing to lead to more hardship. Senator Warren's common sense bill will establish some much needed equity. There's that word again. By streamlining the difficult, emotionally fraught process of bankruptcy so that folks can move forward with their lives, their educations, and their careers and reach financial stability and a place of peace. The Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act would ensure a financial safety net and allow for sustainable paths for recovery for families struggling with burdensome debt. We applaud Senator Warren and Representative Nadler for their commitment to help Americans get a fresh start, particularly in these perilous financial times. Aren't all times perilous? Public citizen enthusiastically supports this critical set of reforms from Senator Warren and Senator Nadler. Modernizing and clarifying the consumer bankruptcy system is long overdue. It was just redone in 2005. And I'm going to tell you something. It takes many years for this to come to clarity, because when you pass new laws, all these issues have to be litigated because nobody really knows what it means, and so you have to go through court cases. We're just now from 2005 coming to a point where many of the provisions in BAPCPA have become clarified. Because it takes that long to get through the court system, and so we're going to come up with a whole new regime. That'll take another 10, 12, 14, 18 years before we'll know what it really means. It becomes very difficult. Importantly, the proposal includes protections for both homeowners and renters, prohibits and punishes illegal practices by debt collectors and others. If they're illegal activities, aren't they already prohibited? Addresses racial and gender disparities in bankruptcy system. How do you do that? I don't get that. I don't understand how you get, either you have financial problems or you don't. Doesn't matter what sex you are, what color you are. Would it? Does it? I don't know. And eliminates loopholes exploited by the wealthy. The way that regular Americans can get out of debt. That's a loophole. Finally, it also eliminates one of the cruelest provisions of U.S. law by removing the provision that makes private and federal student loans non-dischargeable. That is really what she's after. Young people have struggled to obtain solid financial footing since the Great Recession. That was 2018. And the challenges of COVID-19. We applaud Senator and Representative introduction to the Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act, which would provide a more straightforward path for economically distressed Americans to move forward. In particular, the bill's provision to make student loan debt dischargeable would be a much-needed change in law to help struggling student borrowers. This bill's focus on racial and gender disparities in the bankruptcy system would also foster greater equity and strengthen the strained social safety net. Again, I don't know what that means. I don't see how that can make a difference. Here's another story here. Elizabeth Warren wants to let people erase student debt by declaring bankruptcy. How much time we have? We got enough. Let's go through this. Senator Elizabeth Warren, let's get rid of this. Where are we? Senator Elizabeth Warren plans this week to reintroduce a bill that would overhaul the U.S. bankruptcy rules and create a potential path for Americans to erase student loan debt. The Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2022 would create a new provision in the U.S. Bankruptcy Code, Chapter 10, under which student loans would be treated like credit cards, medical expenses, and other consumer debt. Borrowers could file for Chapter 10 and have their student loan balance canceled with approval from a bankruptcy judge. The Massachusetts Democrat is set to introduce the measure on Thursday at a House Judiciary hearing on bankruptcy reform. Warren's proposal, co-sponsored by Democrat Gerald Nadler of New York, comes as student loan debt has reached a record $1.7 trillion. Federal student loan payments, which have paused the past 2 years because of the pandemic and are set to restart January 1st. So Warren first introduced the legislation in 2020, but it stalled amid Republican opposition, those evil Republicans. Warren's bill would also eliminate Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which allows people to pay off a portion of their personal debt over 3 to 5 years. Sometimes it requires them to use Chapter 13 and not Chapter 7, so they cannot walk away, which allows people. In another important change, the bill would bar individuals from filing a Chapter 7, the provision companies often use to restructure their debts. No, they don't. They use it to eliminate their debts because if a company files Chapter 7, they have to cease operation. That's a liquidation. They liquidate all their assets. It's not a reorganization. That is Chapter 11. The provision companies eliminating those two options in favor of Chapter 10 would simplify the bankruptcy process, which is cumbersome and costly for most individuals. I don't know how it would be easier, since everybody has to go and find a new way and figure out how does that work, because they say they're not going to let people who have money walk away from their debt. That's what Chapter 13. They force people into Chapter 13 to pay monthly to a trustee. So Chapter 10, as far I understand it, they're still going to make people do that. I don't know how that's going to work. Bankruptcy reform has long been a signature issue for Warren, a Massachusetts Democrat who taught bankruptcy law at Harvard University. And that's why she knows that student debt is so high, because she benefited from it in the early 1990s, and who is an author of many scholarly papers, articles, and books on the subject. As part of that focus, she has argued that current bankruptcy law hurts the average American because it bars them from discharging student loans or home mortgages. Actually, you can discharge your home mortgage. Those are dischargeable in bankruptcy. They still have a lien on your home, and so if you don't pay them, they can still foreclose, and I don't see that changing. So this is just wrong. You still could keep your home, and you can discharge your home mortgage in bankruptcy today. Often the two biggest obligations for consumers. Filing for personal bankruptcy has significant drawbacks, as probably it should be. For example, a bankruptcy is noted on a consumer's credit report for at least 7 years, making it tougher to get a mortgage. Actually, it is reported on for 7 to 10 years, but it doesn't have an effect on your credit score for that long. I've seen people clean up their credit in 2 years. Before 2008, I saw it in 1 year. I saw people file bankruptcy and buy a house within a year. So I've seen it done. Now with the changes, that's not really possible. Yeah, I think you have to be out 2 years. I'd have to talk to my friend David Hochberg about that. Recovering from bankruptcy can thus take years. And, well, it's going to take some time. And as I said, I've seen people recover in a year or 2 years. Still, for Americans crushed under 5 or 6 figure loan balances, bankruptcy might be the only viable option. Before 1976, Americans could file bankruptcy and have their student loans erased. With the support of lenders and other corporations, the Bankruptcy Code was changed in 1978 and 2005 to discourage what critics called bankruptcy abuse. Critics called it. There wasn't any bankruptcy abuse. Is that what there's? I don't know. Making it more difficult to eliminate those debts. Warren's bill faces considerable obstacles on Capitol Hill, even before the uncertain outcome of November's midterm elections. But Congress could be more receptive now because of renewed public attention on the crushing burden of student debt, including President Biden's move last month to cancel up to $20,000 in loans for some borrowers, a spokesman for Warren told. So they're already forgiven all of it, I think unconstitutionally, and now they want to make sure everybody can get it reduced or eliminated. President Biden has already taken a historic step to reduce the crushing effects of student loan debt that can drive people to bankruptcy. And he endorsed the framework of this billing during his presidential campaign. Actually, our friend attorney Ray Kaplan, helps people with credit with student loans now. And the government has programs for people to pay less or pay based on their income. So it's not true that it will drive you into bankruptcy. You need sometimes go and seek some help, but you can pay based on your income. Now, other debt might make it that you can't pay it, but that other debt is dischargeable in bankruptcy. So anyway, I found the Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2020. And the bill generally revises consumer bankruptcy law by establishing a new Chapter 10 for individual debtors with not more than $7.5 million in debt. Well, that's most of America, right? The bill eliminates the ability of individual debtors to file a bankruptcy under Chapter 7, liquidation bankruptcy, and repeals Chapter 13, which requires individual debtors to comply with a repayment plan to receive a discharge of debt. Under Chapter 10, debtors may receive a discharge of debt through making minimum payment obligations based on the debtor's assets and income, which may result in immediately discharge for individuals with no minimum payment obligations. The bill also provides for residential protections for debtors and revises what type of debt is dischargeable in bankruptcy. An individual may obtain a discharge under Chapter 10 once every 6 years. Individuals may seek limited bankruptcy proceedings on certain debts, such as a home mortgage. The bill also establishes consumer bankruptcy protections, including creating a consumer bankruptcy ombuds on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That bureau was something that Elizabeth Warren strongly supported in forging, and then she sought to be the chairman of that bureau. Did not get that job, and then ran for senator. So she's been highly involved in it. So anyway, that's where we are on this. It's kind of silly. Well, I don't know if how silly. I won't know exactly how to criticize it until I know what's in it. That's all. All the platitudes sound great, but what's really in it, we won't know. They never like to tell you that. We got to pass the bill to find out what's in it, as Nancy Pelosi has always told us. Pass the bill to find out what's in it. So thanks so much for joining us. I ask you to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. We need your help. We've got to get people to like and subscribe to watch this. So we need your help to do so. And remember, if you're facing if you're facing tax debt, if you have unfiled tax returns, get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com, freeirsbook.com. That's freeirsbook.com. We will ask for a small shipping and handling fee, but the book is free, and all the bonuses that go along with it are also free. So go to freeirsbook.com. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We appreciate it. We'll be back here now on Friday. I have Karen Conti. She's going to be on the podcast at Trust Radio Network at about 2 o'clock on Friday. Karen Conti, family attorney here in Chicago, a frequent guest on my show because she has so much great information that she likes to share. So don't forget to join us on Friday. I won't be here tomorrow, Thursday, but we'll be back here on Monday. So thanks so much for your help, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Out.